Hey book girlies, I'm Sarah.
Hey gamer guys, it's Ian.
And you're listening to a pod of sass and sarcasm.
So,
Played any good games recently?
I was gonna say, what do you want to know about Return to Moria? So I haven't really made much progress, but I feel like you would like to know a little bit more about it.
Is this, Return to Moria and not the Mines of Moria?
It's Lord of the Rings Return to Moria.
I thought the game was called the Mines of Moria.
No, it just takes place in Moria, which is the city thing.
Oh.
There are mines in Moria too.
What's the purpose of the game? Like, what's the goal?
You are trying to escape the tunnels, essentially.
Why?
The whole purpose of you being there is to try to reclaim Moria for the dwarves. And then you manage to get in, and now that you're in, you can't get out.
Reclaim it from whom?
Goblins.
Where did the goblins come from?
They're leftovers from Sauron and Saruman.
Oh, I was really, really hoping you would say goblins come from Nilbog.
They come from Stonehenge.
I feel like that's such an obscure reference that if we don't explain what that is, people are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Just one of the
worst movies
of all time.
Yes, if you don't know, this is a movie called Troll 2.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with the first Troll movie.
There isn't even a Troll one.
There are other movies that have the name Troll.
There are other movies called Troll, but
they have nothing to do with this, so I don't know where the two comes from.
This pair
of directors
didn't write a Troll movie. They only wrote Troll 2.
They didn't do Troll initially, and this is called Troll 2 for whatever reason. There are no trolls in it.
Yeah.
There's goblins.
It's goblins and a witch. Or a sorcerer?
I would guess a witch.
Yeah.
And, I mean, first of all, they better have paid her eyebrows separate from what they paid her because those things were carrying that movie, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies. It is a terrible movie. So, like, if you're looking for a cinematic masterpiece, I mean, in a way, it's a cinematic masterpiece, but I have a soft spot in my heart for really bad movies, and this is, I have to watch it every Halloween because it's so funny.
So we're taking it back from the goblins.
From Nilbog.
From Nilbog.
Which is goblin spelled backwards, by the way, if you haven't picked up on that part.
And orcs. There's orcs in there, too.
Are those from Crow? I'm sorry.
I've kind of explained the goal, the overall arching goal is to get out. But I think that the practical goal is to figure out why every door is cursed and why there's cursed energy everywhere. And just you're trying to figure out how to get out.
Do you, as a player of the game, know why there's curses? Like you specifically, you personally?
No, I have no idea. I haven't discovered why yet. I'm assuming there's some kind of wizard involved. A dark wizard.
Oh, I was about to say Gandalf?
No, but I did find Gandalf's hat.
Oh.
Can you believe it? I found his hat. It was just chilling on some books.
So, question. When Gandalf became the White Wizard, why didn't he wear a hat? But when he was Gandalf the Grey, he wore a hat.
That's because he was traveling around outside and he needed a hat to protect him from the rain.
The amount of times that I have threatened to murder you on this podcast is maybe concerning, but oh my god. If you say anything like that again, I'm gonna hurt you. Okay. You said that you've played this game with your friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you prefer it to be a solo game, or do you prefer working with your friends?
Working with my friends makes it go faster, and it's a lot easier because there's more bodies to take hits from the enemies. It's just easier. I think I like exploring the regions on my own, but everything's just much faster and it just happens more quickly with friends because then they're also exploring the areas or they can just help you with fights.
Is this like, I guess I don't know what different kinds of games there are, but I know that there are some games that are very like story and plot driven, and then some of them that are just like fairly repetitive in their missions kind of thing until you like, and they just get increasingly harder and harder and harder, but then you also get increasingly better equipment or spells or whatever. Like, I guess, what kind of game would you describe this one as?
This is like a survival game. It's more of a survival type game because you have to cook your own meals, you have to gather your own supplies, and the progression is you're building higher and higher tiered equipment. The first zones you unlock a bow and arrow, and you have like a short sword or an iron sword. Then the next area, it's like, okay, now you can have a steel pickaxe and you can make steel items. And here's a different type of weapon. Here's like a battle axe. And so recently we just unlocked like crossbows. And then the next tier of pickaxe, which lets you mine harder and more difficult materials. That's the gist of how most survival games go.
When you say survival game, is it one of those types of games where if you die at any point in the game, you have to go all the way back to the beginning?
No. And this one where when you die, your body just stays there and it has all your stuff on it. So when you respawn, you go back to a bed or something and you have to get back to your body.
Do you find your body or do you just find your stuff?
And this one is like a little stone pillar that you have to click on to get your stuff.
That's really weird. I think it would also be kind of interesting is like if you died, then that like character is... Like, it would be cool if each character had, like, specific abilities or whatever, but, like, if you died, that character is dead, and then you still wake up in the bed or whatever, but now you're a different character kind of thing, and you were just, like, part of the fight, but you survived or whatever, and then you go back to claim that person's stuff. The only thing you wouldn't be able to get would be, like, if they had special abilities or whatever, and then you have your own new special abilities. That would be kind of interesting. I don't know how enjoyable that would be to play, but I feel like it'd be kind of interesting.
There's definitely games like that out there.
Because I know that there's some games where it's like if you die, there is no saving your spot in the game or any of your progress, and then if you die, you have to start all over again.
Yeah, and those are kind of like roguelikes.
Is there like a chart that I could have at some point to explain the different kinds of games?
I suppose, yeah. 'Cause there's like a lot of jargon with it, but it's like any kind of industry to get into. Like it has its own genres. Like there's different genres of books, there's different genres of movies, and there's different genres of games.
I feel like there's multiple just types of genres because like when I think of like genres of movies and books, they can fall into the same categories. Like you can have horror, you can have adventure, you can have fantasy, you can have historical fiction, you can have whatever.
Yeah.
But with games, not only can you have those like categories as far as like what the content is, but then you can also have different genres like how the game is played.
Yeah.
And like the mechanics of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, books and movies describe how the plot works and how the plot is formed. I'm sure there's some kind of descriptors for how a movie is filmed. And for games, it's like it describes the plot, and then it also has another thing to describe is how the game mechanics work. And so there's a whole new set of descriptors.
Well, because like even with books, there is some of that little bit of overlap that you can have with games as far as like some of the mechanics. With books, you can have first, second, or third person for how you're viewing the story. Just like in a game, you can have, well, first or third. I've not seen a game that could effectively do a second person. I suppose it could, but like, because like you're either looking at the people from like the omnipotent point of view.
Yeah, the isometric type view.
Right. Or you're looking through a particular character's eyes. And so you've got first or third.
Yeah, but third is broken up into third over the shoulder or third isometric or yeah.
Which is the same in books. Like there's different kinds of third person. There's third person limited and third person omnipotent. And so that's kind of like with video games, I've definitely seen the over the shoulder type thing where it's limited. You are still attached to like one character. Or there's the one where you see the whole map and you see the whole, like all of the people at once and stuff like that. And probably some other like variations of stuff too.
Does that kind of answer your question a little bit on what type of game Return to Moria is?
I guess I don't know really how to ask my question though. I have a hard time with understanding games that are not particularly story driven. Like I have a hard time with games that could have multiple endings. That just it really like messes with my ability to understand how it works. Because to me, I'm like, if there's a goal, there is a beginning and an ending point, and sure, you might vary how you get there, but there is like a definite ending point. And I think I always return to the idea of BioShock, where like that is one story, and like even though you make different, is it? I always thought it's like
two endings.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. All I knew is that my friend in high school really wanted me to play that game. And they showed me, I guess, one of the endings that they thought was crazy. And I was like, okay. I didn't get it because like we rushed through it. But are there games that have like one ending?
Yeah, the Return to Moria does have one story it's telling you.
Then do you have those moments where you can make decisions about stuff?
You're not making like story decisions. You're making decisions on like how you go about progressing, but there is only one way to get through everything.
See, like to me that makes sense. I think I've seen you play those games where like I remember there was one time when you were like, how should I answer or how should I respond as this character? And I'm like, I don't know or whatever, but like and like the way that you respond to like the dialogue or whatever can change the outcome of the story. And those ones just mess with my brain a little bit too much.
Role-playing games.
Yeah, I guess.
But all games can be a role-playing game, technically, if you pretend you're the character.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. My foot is falling asleep. Oh my god.
Yeah, foot's falling asleep when you haven't even gotten into the book yet.
Well, speaking of the book, do you want to get into it?
Let's get into it.
So we are apparently still continuing to read The Nightingale. Wow, I was very sassy when I wrote this, apparently. So we are apparently continuing to read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Vienne and Isabel are sisters, but they were never close. When their maman died, their dad abandoned them to orphanages and finishing schools, and the two of them handled that trauma very differently. Vienne felt like Isabel was always ridiculous and immature, acting out for no reason, while Isabel felt like Vienne abandoned her just like everyone else. When Germany invaded France, Isabel and Vienne were not only forced to live with each other, but also to live with Captain Wolfgang Beck, a Nazi who came across as a gentleman but had some sneaky ways about him. Captain Beck and Vienne had this incredibly inappropriate flirtation with each other, partially due to the loneliness of being separated from their respective spouses, partly because of their forced proximity, and partly because who knows why people become attracted to each other. Isabel eventually leaves her sister in Caraveau to carry out their underground resistance against the Nazi occupation, and sets up the Nightingale escape route where she guides Allied airmen over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, then to be sent back home to fight another day. The story that Isabel spun was that she was young and in love, which Vienne and everyone else seemed to believe without a second thought. While her work brought her back to Caraveau several times, she never ventured near her sister for fear of endangering her and Sophie. And during this time, both sisters were made aware of the Nazis' more sinister plans for the Jewish community in France, and both of them do try to protect their friends, but both of them had limited success. So now the story is entering October of 1942. The last part that we read with Vienne was also around this same time. It's important to know that the day that she came in from standing out in the queues all day and then Beck gave her the papers, it's important to know that it was raining that day because there's a part here where Isabel will be in Caraveau and it will also be raining, and so that's implied that it's the same day that those things were taking place.
All right.
So this is a little bit before then, so this is not quite at the raining part yet. But Isabel is on another courier mission for the French underground. She's been incredibly busy with her work, and the Nazis have started to notice the role that women were playing in this war, and so have been a little bit harsher with looking through their papers and making sure that they are who they say they are. She gets stopped more often, and her papers are looked over more closely, but she still seems to slip by their notice, probably because she's pretty. She meets discreetly with Anouk, who informs her that there's a meeting that is to be held in Caraveau with some of the underground's organizers and that Isabel should join them for it. Summer ended. Hot golden days gave way to washed out skies and falling rain. Isabel was so focused on the escape route that she hardly noticed the change in weather. On a chilly October afternoon, she stepped out of the train carriage in a crowd of passengers, holding a bouquet of autumn flowers. As she walked up the boulevard, German motorcars clogged the street, honking loudly. Soldiers strode confidently among the cowed, drab Parisians. Swastika flags flapped in the wintry wind. She hurried down the metro steps. Isabel was almost to the train when a whistle blared. She froze. Nazi soldiers, accompanied by French collaborators, moved through the tunnel, talking to one another, pointing at people, pulling them out to the perimeter, forcing them to their knees. A rifle appeared in front of her. "Papers," the German said. Isabel clutched the flowers in one hand and fumbled nervously with her purse with the other. She had a message for Anouk wrapped within the bouquet. It was not unexpected, of course, this search. Since Allied successes in North Africa had begun, the Germans stopped people constantly, demanding papers. In the streets, the shops, the train stations, the churches. There was no safety anywhere. She handed over her false identity card. "I'm meeting a friend of my mother's for lunch." The Frenchman sidled up to the German and perused the papers. He shook his head, and the German handed Isabel her papers and said, "Go." Isabel smiled quickly, nodded a thank you, and hurried for the train, slipping into an open carriage just as the doors slid shut. By the time she exited in the 16th district, her calm had returned. A wet fog clung to the streets, obscuring the buildings and the barges moving slowly on the Seine. Sounds were amplified by the haze, turned strange. At the avenue, she turned the corner and went into a bistro, one of the few with its lights on. A nasty wind ruffled the awning. "Juliet? Is that you?" Isabel saw Anouk and smiled. "Gabrielle, how lovely to see you." Isabel handed Anouk the flowers. While they stood there, sipping their coffee in the icy weather, Anouk said, "I spoke with my Uncle Henri yesterday. He misses you." "Is he unwell?" No, quite the opposite. He's planning a party for Tuesday night. He asked me to extend an invitation." Anouk looked at Isabel. Smoky shadows circled her eyes. New lines had begun to crease her cheeks and brow. This life in the shadows had begun to take a toll on her. "Are you all right, my friend?" Isabel asked. Anouk's smile was tired, but true. "Oui." She paused. "I saw Gaetan last night. He will be at the meeting in Caraveau." "Why tell me?" "Isabel, you are the most transparent person I have ever met. Every thought and feeling you have reveals itself in your eyes. Are you unaware of how often you've mentioned him to me?"
Oh my goodness. Just casually dropping the pretense and just saying her name out loud.
I have a thought about that. "Really? I thought I had hidden it. It's nice, actually. It reminds me of what we are fighting for. Simple things. A girl and a boy and their future." She kissed Isabel's cheeks. Then she whispered, "He mentions you as well." So I wasn't initially going to include this passage, but first I did need their love story a little bit because this has been very hopeless, and the only other love story we've been getting is that toxic Beck and Vienne nonsense. So I'm like, I needed that little pick-me-up. But more importantly, I, just like you, am surprised that Anouk broke character and started referring to Isabel and Gaetan by their real names and dropping the charade of a party for her uncle and calling it a meeting in Caraval. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, really? You don't think that people are listening to you? And they keep, like, everybody keeps warning Isabel about how dangerous this is and that she isn't supposed to slip up. Like, if you slip up once, you're dead, we're all dead, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, so far we haven't seen her slip up. Everybody else around her seems to be slipping up at times. And I'm like, what the fuck? I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I've been saying for a while that I think Isabel is going to die, but I always assumed it was going to be something because of her own recklessness. But now I'm starting to wonder if maybe somebody else makes a mistake that gets her caught in some way and then in turn gets her killed. I'm not saying that it was Anouk's slip up, and I'm not saying that anybody's going to do it on purpose necessarily. Like, I don't think Anouk is like a double agent or anything like that, but I just think that somebody else is going to slip up and that is going to endanger Isabel instead of the other way around of Isabel messing up and that endangers somebody.
Yeah, I could see that.
Anyway, Isabel goes to Caraveau, and luckily for her, it's raining when she arrives. So this is the same day that I'm assuming Beck brought the false papers for Ari to the house. It was raining that day as well. So it's raining when she arrives, so nobody really pays attention to her. She meets Henri at the hotel that he runs, and I can't tell if it's the same hotel that the Nazis had taken over as their makeshift headquarters earlier in the book when Vienne went into their lair basically to try to deal with the list situation.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's more than one hotel, but the place is swarming with Nazis and French police and gendarmes and, of course, SS soldiers. Henri meets Isabel at the front desk where he leads her to her room because obviously Isabel is staying right under the noses while they've been looking everywhere for the Nightingale. They chat a bit and Isabel finally asks about the well-being of her sister, and you may recall that before she left, she had asked Henri to keep an eye out for Vienne, to watch over her and take care of her if he could, and he discloses some of the rumors that have been going around. At the hotel's front desk, she rang the bell. Henri came out of the back room, holding a tray of coffees. He saw her and nodded. "One moment, madame," Henri said, gliding past her, carrying a tray to the table with 2 SS agents sat like spiders in their black uniforms. When Henri returned to the front desk, he said, "Madame Gervais, welcome back. Your room is ready, of course, if you'll follow me." She nodded and followed Henri down the narrow hallway and up the stairs to the second floor. There, he pressed a skeleton key into the lock, gave it a twist, and opened the door to reveal a small bedroom with a single bed, a nightstand, and a lamp. He led her inside, kicked the door shut with his foot, and took her in his arms. "Isabelle," he said, pulling her close. "It is good to see you." He released her. She unbuttoned her coat and draped it over the end of the bed. Reaching into the lining, she pulled out an envelope and handed it to Henri. "Here you go," she said, giving him money that had come from MI9. His hotel was one of the key safe houses their group maintained. Isabelle loved that they housed Brits and Yanks and resistors right under the Nazis' noses. She pulled out a chair from behind the scarred writing desk and sat down. "The meeting is set for tonight, 11 p.m. in the abandoned barn on the Angler farm. What's it about? I'm not in the know." He sat down at the end of the bed. She could tell by the look on his face that he was going to get serious, and she groaned. "I hear the Nazis are desperate to find the Nightingale. Word is that they're trying to infiltrate the escape route." "I know this, Henri." She lifted one eyebrow. "I hope you're not going to tell me that it's dangerous." "You are going too often. How many trips have you made?" 24. Henri shook his head. "No wonder they're desperate to find you. We hear word of another escape route running through Marseille and Perpignan, and that's having success too. There's going to be trouble, Isabelle." She was surprised by how much his concern moved her, and how nice it was to hear her own name. It felt good to be Isabelle Rossignol again, even if only for a few moments, and to sit with someone who knew her. So much of her life was spent hiding and on the run, in safe houses with strangers. Still, she saw no reason to talk about this. The escape route was invaluable and worth the risk they were taking. "You're keeping an eye on my sister, oui? The Nazi still billets there?" Henri's gaze slid away from hers. "What is it?" "Vienne was fired from her teaching post some time ago." "Why?" "Her students love her. She's an excellent teacher." "The rumor is that she questioned a Gestapo officer." "That doesn't sound like Vienne. So she has no income? What is she living on?" Henri looked uncomfortable. "There is gossip." "Gossip?" "About her and the Nazi." So, because we've been talking a little bit about how the two of them have been inappropriate with each other, but of course, people have already been talking about how
from before she was even fired.
Yeah. Because when she got those postcards for herself and for Rachel and all of the women in the town whose husbands they found out were in a prisoner of war camp, all of them were like, "How'd you get these postcards?" And somebody was like, "Oh, I bet her German got them for her for a favor or whatever." And so people have already been judging Vienne for no reason. And they were actually in that same scene, they talked about how they'd been judging her since she fell in love with Antoine. So since she was like 14.
Her whole life they'd been judging her.
So now, especially with Rachel's son Ari, who now goes by Daniel, and Beck, Vienne is just finding herself in a very dangerous predicament because, again, there was always gossip about the two of them, Vienne and Beck, even in the beginning when she got the postcards, even before that. And it doesn't help that the two of them are always looking at each other like love-struck puppies, but I don't know if Vienne realizes how dangerous it is to be seen as the mistress of a Nazi, not just by the gossips of the town, but from the other perspective. Because again, I have a sneaking suspicion that Beck is the man who either gets killed or should have been killed by one of the sisters. So I don't know if she realizes that from the Nazis' perspective, or even from Beck's perspective, if Beck was ever to be questioned about his involvement with helping Rachel or getting Ari false papers, they could use Vienne to hurt him. And so it's dangerous to be seen as somebody that a Nazi cares for from any perspective, because if you're on the French side of it, you're like, you don't want to be seen as a collaborator with the Nazis. And then if you're on the German side of it, you're like, oh, you're somebody that we can use to hurt somebody else. So later that night, like 11 p.m., after curfew, Isabelle is creeping through the streets of Caraveau on her way to this super top secret meeting that nobody seems to know anything about, when she basically witnesses 2 German airplanes taking down an American plane that was trying to bomb the airfield near Vienne's house. She of course rushes to help, which some might view as brave, others might view as reckless. We'll leave that where that is because it is what it is. She does go over to help. At first, I was very nervous because she does find the pilot of the American craft. And we'll talk about what happens there. I was really nervous that it was Perkins because I was like, oh my gosh, she rescued him. And then, wow, watch him die. That'd be really sad. It's not Perkins, but I do have to give you that now because it's not Perkins. The airplanes roared overhead. There was another round of gunfire, and the American airplane was hit. Smoke roiled out. A screaming sound filled the night. The airplane plummeted toward the ground, twirled its wings, catching the moonlight, reflecting it. It crashed hard enough to rattle Isabel's bones and shake the ground beneath her feet. Steel hitting dirt, rivets popping from metal, roots being torn up. The broken airplane skidded through the forest, breaking trees as if they were matchsticks. The smell of smoke was overwhelming. And then a giant whoosh, and the airplane burst into flames. In the sky, a parachute appeared, swinging back and forth, the man suspended beneath it, looking as small as a comma. Isabel cut through the swath of burning trees. Smoke stung her eyes. Where was he? A glimpse of white caught her eye, and she ran toward it. A limp parachute lay across the scrubby ground, the airman attached to it. Isabel heard the sound of voices. They weren't far away, and the crunching of footsteps. She hoped to God it was her colleagues coming for the meeting, but there was no way to know. The Nazis would be busy at the airfield, but not for long. She skidded to her knees, unhooked the airman's parachute, gathered it, and ran with it as far as she dared, burying it as best she could beneath a pile of dead leaves. Then she ran back to the pilot, grabbed him by the wrists, and dragged him deeper into the woods. You'll have to stay quiet. Do you understand me? I'll come back, but you need to lie still and be quiet. You betcha, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Isabel covered him with leaves and branches, but when she stood back, she saw her footprints in the mud, each one oozing with black water now, and the rutted drag marks she'd made hauling him over here. Black smoke rolled past her, engulfed her. The fire was getting closer, burning brighter. Merde, she muttered. There were voices, people yelling. She tried to rub her hands clean, but the mud just smeared and smeared, marking her. 3 shapes came out of the woods, moving toward her. Isabel? A man said. Is that you? A torchlight flicked on, revealing Henri, Didier, and Gaetan. You found the pilot? Henri asked. Isabel nodded. He's wounded. Dogs barked in the distance. The Nazis were coming. Didier glanced behind them. We haven't much time. We'll never make it to town, Henri said. Isabel made a split-second decision. I know we're somewhere close we can hide him.
She's stashing him in the barn.
Yes, obviously she's going to be bringing him to Vienn's cellar in the barn.
Even when she's not there, she's endangering her sister.
Yes. I do want to talk about that moment, though, about her trying to scrub her hands clean of the mud and how it just smeared and marked her. I think that that word choice is very powerful.
Yeah, I did like it.
Especially seeing her as being marked or identified or something along those lines, that the message she makes have bigger consequences, bigger impacts, not only on her identity, but also on the people around her. And Vienne had been telling Isabel to stop her antics, not because she didn't agree with them, but because she was worried that her actions would mark the entire family, and that word would eventually lead to all of them getting killed. And I was really just struck by that small passage, and I felt like it meant more. Also, just knowing that the Nazis physically marked people and had like, you know, the yellow stars on people's chests or the pink triangles or whatever marking they decided for different groups of people. So I do think it's really interesting that like the mud and probably blood that was mixed in there marks Isabel.
Yeah, I also noticed didn't use their secret names again. Everyone used their real names.
I know. It really bothers me. Like a lot. Because the one time that Isabel used her real name when she could have used the Juliet name, she had made the choice. She was like, it's a risky choice to say Isabel because I don't have papers that say my name is Isabel. But at the same time,
she's recorded in the building.
Yeah, she was like, so I think it would look more suspicious if somebody who doesn't live there was there past curfew. So she has been making these, to me, very smart decisions about when to use her code name and when to not. Meanwhile, everybody else is just flippant with it. And so it bothers me how much they judge her and say that she's impetuous, that she's reckless, that she's impulsive, when I'm like, you guys aren't even upholding your own standards. You told her that she will always be Juliet until this war is over. And yet
everyone's calling her by her real name over and over and over again.
I know. It's bothering me. So on to Vienn's cellar. The men are extremely wary about this plan, but at this point, what choice do they have? They need a place to hide the pilot, and already the Nazis are searching the area of the crash, so they can't really move him into another location until it's safer. Isabel decides that she's going to get into the cellar with the pilot, and the men begrudgingly put the car back in place over the trap door, leaving Isabel alone in the dark with a dying man. Isabel lit an oil lamp and held it in one hand as she felt her way down the wobbly ladder. Some of the provisions she'd left had been used. She lifted the lamp. "Bring him down." The men exchanged a worried look. "I don't know about this," Henri said. "What choice do we have?" Isabel snapped. "Now bring him down." Gaetan and Henri carried the unconscious airman down into the dark, dank cellar and laid him on the mattress, which made a rustling, whispery sound beneath his weight. Henri gave her a worried look. Then he climbed out of the cellar and stood above them. "Come on, Gaetan." Gaetan looked at Isabel. "We'll have to move the car back into place. You won't be able to get out of here until we come for you. If something happened to us, no one would know you were here." She could tell he wanted to touch her, and she ached for it, but they stood where they were, their arms at their sides. "The Nazis will be relentless in their search for this airman. If you're caught," she tilted her chin, trying to hide how scared she was. "Don't let me be caught." Before he could answer, Henri said, "Come on, Gaetan," from above. "We need to find a doctor and figure out how to get them out of here tomorrow." Gaetan stepped back. The whole world seemed to lie in that small space between them. "When we come back, we'll knock 3 times and whistle, so don't shoot us." "I'll try not to," she said. He paused. "Isabel." She waited, but he had no more to say, just her name, spoken with the kind of regret that had become common. With a sigh, he turned and climbed up the ladder. Moments later, the trapdoor banged shut. She heard the boards overhead groan as the Renault was rolled back into place, and then silence. Isabel started to panic. It was the locked bedroom door again. She couldn't get out of here, not even in an emergency. "Stop it. Be calm. You know what needs to be done." She went over to the shelving, pushed her father's shotgun aside, and retrieved the box of medical supplies. A quick inventory revealed scissors, a needle and thread, alcohol, bandages, chloroform, benzodrine tablets, and adhesive tape. She knelt beside the airman and set the lamp down on the floor beside her. Blood soaked the chest of his flight suit, and it took great effort to peel the fabric away. When she did, she saw the giant gaping hole in his chest and knew there was nothing she could do. She sat beside him, holding his hand until he took one last troubled breath. Then his breathing stopped. His mouth slowly gaped open. She gently eased the dog tags from around his neck. They would need to be hidden. She looked down at that. Lieutenant Keith Johnson. Isabel blew out the lamp and sat in the dark with a dead man. I just found that kind of sad.
Yeah, taking this big risk for what seems like nothing now.
Yeah, but now, like, you can't go back on it either. You can't be like, "Oh, he died. Cool, we'll just put him somewhere." No, that doesn't work. Because, again, the Nazis are going to be relentless in their search for him. So even if he's dead, she still needs to hide him.
Yeah, I figured they would just drag him into the woods somewhere.
So the next morning, when Vienne went to prepare for her day, she found a slightly crazed Captain Beck pacing in her living room, looking disheveled, and he was apparently one of the Germans that was on the search for that downed airman. And obviously, they hadn't been able to find him, only his parachute. Vienne went downstairs to make coffee and almost ran into Captain Beck, who was pacing the living room. "Oh, Herr Captain, I'm sorry." He seemed not to hear her. She had never seen him look so agitated. His usually pomaded hair was untended. A lock kept falling in his face, and he cursed repeatedly as he brushed it away. He was wearing his gun, which he never did in the house. He strode past her, his hands fisted at his sides. Anger contorted his handsome face, made him almost unrecognizable. "An aeroplane went down near here last night," he said, facing her at last. "An American aeroplane. The one they call a Mustang. I thought you wanted their airplanes to go down. Isn't that why you shoot at them?" Which, first of all, again, if we keep talking about the old woman and her sass, that is sassy as fuck, Vienne. "I thought that's why you shoot at them."
Thought you didn't want those guys around.
Oh my God. Like, that's, I mean, dangerous to be that sassy, but that was so fucking funny. All right. "I thought you wanted their airplanes to go down. Isn't that why you shoot at them? We searched all night and didn't find a pilot. Someone is hiding him." "Hiding him? Oh, I doubt that. Most likely he died." "There would be a body, madam. We found a parachute, but no body." "But who would be so foolish?" Vienne said. "Don't you execute people for that?" Swiftly. Vienne had never heard him speak in such a way. It made her draw back and remember the whip he'd held on the day Rachel and the others were deported. "Forgive my manner, madame, but we have shown you all of our best behaviors, and this is what we get for many of you French. Lies and betrayal and sabotage." Vienne's mouth dropped open in shock. He looked at her, saw how she was staring at him, and he tried to smile. "Forgive me again. I don't mean you, of course. The Commandant is blaming me for this failure to find the airman. I am charged with doing better today." He went to the front door, opened it. "If I do not." Through the open door, she saw a glimpse of gray-green in her yard. Soldiers. "Good day, madam." So I think this is really interesting to see because we've only ever seen Beck when he was trying to either woo Vienne or manipulate her. I don't think we've ever really seen him angry before.
Well, things have always been going pretty well for him. Now he's on the hook for something.
Which is exactly what I was getting afraid of earlier. I also think it's really interesting to see how he's already separating people in his head. Like, Vienne is not included with his distaste for the general French people. He's like, all of you French are horrible, except for you, Vienne, of course. You're not like them, you know, whatever. And like having like an us versus them mentality and having this like superiority thing in his head as far as like there are some people that are better than others and stuff. So it's like, even though he's said that what is going on with the Jewish population, even though people still don't know about it, he clearly does. He's like, that is an evil that is impossible to describe, and he thinks it's horrible, but he still kind of has that inner like superiority complex as far as he still thinks he's better than other people, and he thinks that the Germans are better than the French. I do wonder if Beck had started to see that what the Germans were doing to the Jews and the Poles and the Freemasons and everyone that the Nazis had othered, quote unquote. I think he might have been starting to see them as humans, and he was starting to break down and rebel against the regime a little bit. But again, there's still a little bit of that superiority that he's placing Germans above the French, and Vienne somewhere between Germans and French people. Like, she's better than the general French, but she's not as good as Germans in his mind. I don't know. So after Beck leaves, Vienne notices that the barn door is slightly ajar, and she rushes over there, assuming that maybe Rachel escaped from wherever she was and came back. And if she was going to go anywhere, she would go to the barn because that's where she hid. But of course, Vienne finds Isabel in the barn cellar with a dead pilot, and Vienne becomes blind with rage. She thinks that Isabel is being selfish, and she's terrified that if Isabel is found, she will be killed, and she'll get Vienne and Sophie and Ari killed. Vienne slipped into the boots by the door. As soon as the soldiers were out of sight, she hurried up the hill toward the barn. In her haste, she slipped twice in the wet grass and nearly fell. Righting herself at the last minute, she took a deep breath and opened the barn door all the way. She noticed right away that the car had been moved. "I'm coming, Rachel," she said. She put the car in neutral and rolled it forward until the cellar door was revealed. Squatting down, she felt for the flat metal handle and lifted the hatch door, letting it bang against the car fender. She got a lantern, lit it, and peered down into the dark cellar. "Rachel? Go away, Vienne, now." "Isabel?" Vienne descended the ladder, saying, "Isabel, what are—" She dropped to the ground and turned, the lantern in her hand swinging light. Her smile faded. Isabel's dress was covered in blood. Her blonde hair was a mess, full of leaves and twigs, and her face was so scratched it looked like she'd gone running through a blackberry patch. But that wasn't the worst of it. "The pilot," Vienne whispered, staring at the man lying on the misshapen mattress. It scared her so much she backed into the shelving. "You shouldn't have come down here." "I'm the one who shouldn't be here? You fool! Do you know what they'll do to us if they find him here? How could you bring this danger to my house? I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" Vienne said. Anger swept through her. How dare her sister do this? Put Sophie and her at risk. And now there was Ari here, who still didn't understand that he needed to be Daniel. "You'll get us all killed." Vienne backed away, reached for the ladder. She had put as much distance as she could between herself and this airman, and her reckless, selfish sister. "Be gone by tomorrow morning, Isabel, and don't come back." Isabel had the nerve to look wounded. "But don't," Vienne snapped. "I'm done making excuses for you. I was mean to you as a girl. Maman died. Papa is a drunk. All of this is the truth. And I have longed to be a better sister to you. But that stops here. You are as thoughtless and reckless as always. Only now you will get people killed. I can't let you endanger Sophie. Do not come back. You are not welcome here. If you return, I will turn you in myself." On that, Vienne clambered up the ladder and slammed the cellar door shut behind her.
I was hoping she'd say Ari's name as well.
Well, Isabel doesn't know about that.
Well, she would know who Ari is, though.
I guess. I don't know. I think Vienne is trying not to
even say,
right, like what happened to Rachel. And I think part of that's for her own grieving process, as far as like she lost everyone within one night, basically. Anybody that was still close to her, she lost. So I found this scene to be heartbreaking, but honestly not surprising. We've been talking about how Isabel is reckless. Isabel is kind of stupid. Isabel does things very impulsively, which her heart is in the right place, but it's just she doesn't think about the consequences of her actions. And so I personally feel like Vienne is right for yelling at Isabel. I think it's sad because both of them have misunderstandings about what the other is going through. Vienne doesn't know everything that Isabel's gone through. She doesn't know that Isabel is a hero and is doing really important work to resist the German occupation. But on the other hand, Isabel doesn't know what Vienne's gone through with losing her best friend, losing Sarah, and like losing everything and losing her job and all that other kind of stuff. Like she just doesn't, neither of them gets the other one.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping Isabel sees the new patch of dirt in the memorial area and she can just questions it at least.
Yeah. I think at the same time too, though, like I agree that Vienne is justified in yelling at Isabel, but at the same time, Vienne herself has admitted that she should have listened to Isabel more and that Isabel was right. And she's told Isabel not to come back several times. And it's kind of one of those, like, it's a sisterly thing to say sometimes. I don't know. I think that while Isabel may be reckless and endangering more people than necessary, Vienne is also very prideful and quick to judge and protecting the status quo over what is morally right and just. The one time that she actually was protecting what was right was when she went to the train station with Rachel. That's the only time that she put somebody else's safety over her own, or over her family's safety anyways. So throughout that day, Vienne debates what she should do. She's worried that the Gestapo and the SS and their dogs will think to investigate the barn without prompting because they are looking everywhere for this airman. And so if they find Isabel, it would be really hard to convince anyone that she didn't know about it because Isabel's her sister. And Vienne doesn't know that Isabel has a different identity as well. And so it would just be really hard to convince anybody. And on top of it all, if Isabel was found in the barn, Beck would be humiliated because he's the one that's living there and he's already on the hook for this. So he would be viewed with high suspicion as well, and Vienne knows that humiliated men could become extremely dangerous. So she was like, well, what if I tell Beck? Would he help the way that he helped with Rachel?
No.
Vienne does truly believe him to be a good man, but is there a limit to his patience and his willingness to help? Vienne was still grappling with these questions long after supper had ended, and she'd put the children to bed. She didn't even try to go to sleep. How could she sleep with her family at such risk? At 10 o'clock, she heard footsteps out front and a sharp rap on the door. She put down her darning and got to her feet. Smoothing the hair back from her face, she went to the door and opened it. Her hands were trembling so badly she fisted them at her sides. Herr Captain, she said, you are late. Shall I make you something to eat? He muttered, no thank you, and pushed past her, rougher than he'd ever been before. He went into his room and came back with a bottle of brandy. Pouring himself a huge draught in a chipped cafe glass, he downed the liquid and poured himself another. We didn't find the pilot, he said, downing the second drink, pouring a third. Oh, these Gestapo. He looked at her. They'll kill me, he said quietly. No, surely. They do not like to be disappointed. He drank the third glass of brandy and slammed the glass down on the table, almost breaking it. I have looked everywhere, he said. Every nook and cranny of this God-forsaken town. I've looked in cellars and basements and chicken pens and thickets of thorns and under piles of garbage. And what do I have to show for my efforts? A parachute with blood on it and no pilot. Surely you haven't looked everywhere, she said to console him. Shall I get you something to eat? I saved you some supper. He stopped suddenly. She saw his gaze narrow. Heard him say, it is not possible, but... He grabbed a torchlight and strode to the closet in the kitchen and yanked the door open. What are you doing? I am searching your house. Surely you don't think... She stood there, her heart thumping as he searched from room to room and yanked coats out of the closet and pulled the divan away from the wall. Are you satisfied? Satisfied, madame? We lost 14 pilots this week and God knows how many airplane crew. A Mercedes-Benz factory was blown up 2 days ago and all the workers were killed. My uncle works in that building. Worked, I suppose. I'm sorry, Vienne said. She drew in a deep breath, thinking it was over, and then she saw that he was going outside. Did she make a sound? She was afraid that she did. She surged after him, wanting to grab his sleeve, but she was too late. He was outside now, following the beam of his torchlight, the kitchen door standing open behind him. She ran after him. He was at the dovecote, yanking the door open. Herr Captain! She slowed, trying to calm her breathing as she rubbed her damp palms down her pant legs. You will not find anything or anyone here, Herr Captain. You must know that. Are you a liar, madam? He was not angry. He was afraid. "You know I am not Wolfgang," she said, using his Christian name for the first time. "Surely your superiors will not blame you." "This is the problem with you French," he said. "You fail to see the truth when it sits down beside you." He pushed past her and walked up the hill, toward the barn. He would find Isabel, and the airman. He would never believe that she didn't know about it. She had already shown too much to go back to innocence, and it was too late now to rely on his honor to save Isabel. Vienne had lied to him. He opened the barn door and stood there, his hands on his hips, looking around, checking every inch of the barn, each stall and the hayloft. "You see?" Vienne said. "Now come back to the house. Perhaps you'd like another brandy." He looked down. There were faint tire tracks in the dust. "You once said that Madame de Champlain hid in a cellar." Vienne meant to say something, but when she opened her mouth, nothing came out. He opened the Renault's door, put the car in neutral, and pushed it forward, rolling it far enough to reveal the cellar door. "Captain, please." He bent down in front of her. His fingers moved along the floor, searching the creases for the edges of the hatch. If he opened that door, it was over. He would shoot Isabel, or take her into custody and send her to prison, and Vienne and the children would be arrested. There would be no talking to him, no convincing him. Beck unholstered his gun, cocked it. Vienne looked desperately for a weapon, saw a shovel leaned against the wall. He lifted the hatch and yelled something. As the door banged open, he stood up, taking aim. Vienne grabbed the shovel and swung it at him with all of her strength. The metal scoop made a sickening thunk as it hit him in the back of the head and sliced deeply into his skull. Blood spurted down the back of his uniform. At the same time, 2 shots rang out, one from Beck's gun and one from the cellar. Beck staggered sideways and turned. There was a hole the size of an onion in his chest, spurting blood. A flap of hair and scalp hung over one eye. "Madame," he said, crumpling to his knees. His pistol clattered to the floor. The torchlight rolled across the uneven boards. Vienne threw the shovel aside and knelt down beside Beck, who lay sprawled face first in a pool of his blood. Using all of her weight, she rolled him over. He was pale already, chalkily so. Blood clotted his hair, streaked from his nostrils, bubbled at every breath he took. "I'm sorry," Vienne said. Beck's eyes fluttered open. Vienne tried to wipe the blood off his face, but it just made more of a mess. Her hands were red with it now. "I had to stop you," she said quietly. "Tell my family." Vienne saw the life leave his body, saw his chest stop rising, his heart stop beating. Behind her, she heard her sister climbing up the ladder. "Vienne?" Vienne couldn't move. "Are you all right?" Isabel asked in a breathless, wheezing voice. She looked pale and a little shaky. "I killed him," Vienne said. "He's dead." "No, you didn't. I shot him in the chest," Isabel said. "I hit him in the head with a shovel." "A shovel!" Isabel moved toward her. "Vienne, don't," Vienne said sharply. "I don't want to hear some excuse from you. Do you know what you've done? A Nazi, dead, in my barn." Before Isabel could answer, there was a loud whistle, and then a mule-drawn wagon entered the barn. Vienne lurched for Beck's weapon, staggered to her feet on the blood-slicked floorboards, and pointed the gun at the strangers. "Vienne, don't shoot," Isabel said. "They're friends." Vienne looked at the ragged-looking men in the wagon, and then at her sister, who was dressed in all black and looked milky pale with shadows under her eyes. "Of course they are." She moved sideways, but kept the gun trained on the men crowded onto the front of the rickety wagon. Behind them, in the bed of the wagon, lay a pine coffin. She recognized Henri, the man who ran the hotel in town, with whom Isabel had run off to Paris, the communist with whom Isabel thought she might be in love a little. "Of course," Vienne said. "Your lover." Henri jumped down from the wagon and closed the barn door. "What in the fuck happened?" "Vienne hit him with a shovel and I shot him," Isabel said. "There's some sisterly dispute on who killed him, but he's dead. Captain Beck, the soldier who billets here." Henri exchanged a look with one of the strangers, a scrappy, sharp-faced young man with hair that was too long. "That's a problem," the man said. "Can you get rid of the body?" Isabel asked. She was pressing a hand to her chest, as if her heart was beating too fast. And the airman's too. He didn't make it. A big, shaggy man in a patched coat and pants that were too small jumped down from the wagon. "Disposing of the bodies is the easy part." "Who were these people?" Isabel nodded. "They'll come looking for Beck. My sister can't stand up to questioning. We'll need to put her and Sophie in hiding." That did it. They were talking about Vienne as if she weren't even here. "Running would only prove my guilt." "You can't stay," Isabel said. "It isn't safe." "By all means, Isabel, worry about me now, after you've put me and the children at risk and forced me to kill a decent man. Vienne, please." Vienne felt something in her harden. It seemed that every time she thought she'd hit rock bottom in this war, something worse came along. Now she was a murderess, and it was Isabel's fault. The last thing she was going to do now was follow her sister's advice and leave Les Jardins. I will say that Beck left to look for the airman and never returned. What do I, an ordinary French housewife, know of such things? He was here, and then he was gone. C'est la vie. It's as good an answer as any, Henri said. This is my fault, Isabelle said, approaching Vienne. She saw her sister's regret for this, and her guilt. But Vienne didn't care. She was too scared for the children to worry about Isabelle's feelings. Yes, it is, but you made it mine too. We killed a good man, Isabelle. Isabelle swayed a little, unsteady. Vi, they'll come for you. Vienne started to say, and whose fault is that? But when she looked at Isabelle, the words caught in her throat. She saw blood oozing out from between Isabelle's fingers. For a split second, the world slowed down, tilted, became nothing but noise. The men talking behind her, the mule stomping his hoof on the wooden floor, her own labored breathing. Isabelle crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Before Vienne could even cry out, a hand clapped over her mouth. Arms yanked her back. The next thing she knew, she was being dragged away from her sister. She wrestled to be free, but the man holding her was too strong. She saw Henri drop to his knees beside Isabelle and rip open her coat and blouse to reveal a bullet hole just below her collarbone. Henri tore off his shirt and pressed it to the wound. Vienne elbowed her captor hard enough to make him oomph. She wrenched free and rushed to Isabelle's side, slipping in the blood, almost falling. There's a medical kit in the cellar. The dark-haired man, who suddenly looked as shaky as Vienne felt, leapt down the cellar stairs and returned quickly, carrying the supplies. Vienne's hands were shaking as she reached for the bottle of alcohol and washed her hands as best she could. She took a deep breath and took over the job of pressing Henri's shirt against the wound, which she felt pulsing beneath her. Twice she had to draw back, wring blood out of the shirt, and start again. But finally, the bleeding stopped. Gently, she rolled Isabelle into her arms and saw the exit wound. Thank God. She carefully laid Isabelle back down. This is going to hurt, she whispered. But you're strong, aren't you, Isabelle? She doused the wound with alcohol. Isabelle shuddered at the contact, but she didn't waken or cry out. Vienne fished the needle from the medical kit and threaded it. She doused the needle in alcohol and then leaned down to the wound. Very carefully, she began stitching the gaping flesh together. At last, she sat back, staring down at her bloody hands and bloodied skirt. Isabelle looked so pale and frail, not herself at all. Her hair was filthy and matted, her clothes were wet with her own blood and the airman's, and she looked young. So young. Vienne felt shame so deep it made her sick to her stomach. Had she really told her sister to go away and not come back? How often had Isabelle heard that in her life? And from her own family, from people who were supposed to love her. I'll take her to the safe house in Branton, the black-haired one said. Oh, no, you won't, Vienne said. She looked up from her sister and saw that the three men were standing together by the wagon, conspiring. She got to her feet. She's not going anywhere with you. You're the reason she's here. She's the reason we're here, the dark-haired man said. I'm taking her. Now. Vienne approached the young man. There was a look in his eyes, an intensity, that ordinarily would have frightened her, but she was beyond fear now, beyond caution. I know who you are, Vienne said. She described you to me. You're the one from Tours who left her with a note pinned to her chest as if she were a stray dog. Gaston, right? Gaetan, he said, in a voice that was so soft she had to lean toward him to hear. And you should know about that. Aren't you the one who couldn't bother to be her sister when she needed one? If you try and take her away from me, I'll kill you. You'll kill me, he said, smiling. She cocked her head toward Beck. I killed him with a shovel, and I liked him. Enough. What were you going to say?
I liked that. I killed that guy with a shovel, and I liked him. I don't like you.
I'm so curious what these men think about how Vienne keeps calling him a good man and that she liked him. They're like, he's a Nazi. What the fuck are you on about?
I don't know. He's been living here for like 3 years.
Yeah. Enough, Henri said, stepping between them. She can't stay here, Vienne. Think about it. The Germans are going to come looking for their dead captain. They don't need to find a woman with a gunshot wound and false papers. You understand. The big man stepped forward. We'll bury the captain and the airman. And we'll make sure that motorcycle disappears. Gaetan, you get her to the safe house in the free zone. I'll take care of her, Gaetan said. Vienne didn't believe him. Not for a second. I'm going with you. As far as the border, then I'll walk back when I see you've gotten her to the free zone. You can't do that, Gaetan said. She looked up at him. You'd be surprised what I can do. End scene. End chapter. And I think that's technically the end to part 2 because the next chapter starts again with the old woman. And so the old woman so far seems to introduce each like phase of the book or each part of the book. So of course Kristen Hanna is playing the game of which sister is the old woman and not making it easy because both Isabel and Vienne had a part in Beck's death. But
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not sad to see him go.
neither am I. But it's like it's one of those. Where do you draw the line?
Right.
And Vienne's line has been always at family, like the whole time.
So I do think that this is interesting. It's yet another argument that Vienne could be the old woman because Vienne now feels like she's killed a man. And she now has somebody else that could potentially be the man she should have killed because maybe at some point Gaetan does something that makes Vienne even more upset and been like, I should have fucking killed him when he tried to take Isabel to the free zone. So Isabel isn't dead yet, but she could very well die. And then my prediction that Vienne goes in to either take over the Nightingale escape route or that Vienne starts hiding people in her cellar or something like that is going to come true. That's kind of where I think this story is going to go.
I don't really know where the story is going, honestly, because it's only a matter of time before we see the concentration camps at some point.
Going back to who the old woman is, I swear I'm going to be kind of mad if Vienne is the old woman because...
Don't you already know?
I do know, but I'm reading...
But you're teasing me.
I am teasing you. I'm also reading the note that I wrote before I knew. If Vienne is the old woman, it's going to be mildly upsetting to me because my first instinct was that Vienne was the old woman just because of the way that the book was laid out, in that we would see a chapter from the old woman's perspective and then immediately afterward we would see Vienne. So it would be like the old woman in 1995 and then we would cut back to whatever time during the war and it would be Vienne. It was always Vienne first. And then it would like go over to Isabel. And so I'm like, I had said in the episode with Bree, like Bree was like trying not to say whether she knew anything about it or not. Like she was like covering her face. And I was like, at first I thought that it would be Vienne and Bree was covering her face so that she wouldn't reveal it to me. And then I was like, but then I started thinking it might be Isabel just because of the sass and whatever. And Bree's like, I guess we'll figure it out. And so she was really good at not telling me which one was which, but I'm really, really frustrated because like I called it, but now it's like I've been going back and forth so much that like obviously at some point I would have called it because I've said both of them could be the old woman. I would just be more mad at myself that I didn't stick to my guns about that fact. Especially now because Vienne is angry and her sass tends to come out a little bit more when she's angry. Like, you'd be surprised what I can do. And didn't you want their German airplanes to go down? Or the American airplanes to go down?
Yeah, I feel like she's changed a bit in these last couple chapters.
Yeah.
And it was like a hardening. Like, they described it as a hardening of herself.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to point out very quickly that I just think it's so fucking stupid because Vienne has been saying this whole goddamn time being like, no one is thinking about the children. I always have to think about the children and make choices based on what's best for them. And then immediately in this scene when Isabel's at risk, she's like, let's go to the free zone tonight. I'll walk back, leave an 11-year-old and a 3-year-old alone for hours minimum. I'm like, who's thinking about the children right now, Vienne? Really?
Well, the children are probably just awake right now.
Well, it's the middle of the night. It's like past 10 o'clock. She put them to bed before this happened.
Okay. So I was like, I think the children are in bed, but I don't know if they're asleep or not.
Right.
Because, like, the captain got home.
Yeah. I also think that this poses another threat for Vienne. Not only is it just that, like, they're going to come looking for Beck, but what is she going to do for income and food now?
Yeah, I don't.
Because
she won't make it through another winter.
Not without a job. I was also just very intrigued by I'm intrigued by Captain Beck's death. I'm kind of frustrated that we never saw him in a pickle like that before. We've never seen him like that frantic, crazed look. And so it felt kind of weird to me because part of me was like, well, maybe this was one of the only times that he was truly showing himself. And the rest of the time he was putting on masks to be polite and, gentlemanlike.
He had never failed before. And the consequence of his failure was death. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was exaggerating. He was like, I will be killed.
I think part of it is that we weren't ever supposed to know if we could truly trust him. So if we saw him crack before, then maybe we would never have gotten as close to trusting him as I feel like I got. I got pretty close to like trusting him. I didn't always trust his motivations. I always thought that there was something like selfish that he was getting out of whatever he was doing. But at the same time, he was starting to rebel. And I kind of wanted to see him rebelling for like somebody other than Vienne, but I don't know if we would have ever gotten that. But there's just this part of me that's wishing his mask would have cracked just once before this, so we could see how that evil part of him, the part that believed he was better than other people and better than Vienne, was still there before this happened, because he only started saying this stuff about like, you French and whatever when he was on the hook. I would have loved to have seen him say something like that when he wasn't on the hook for something, when he just, I wanted to see if he truly believed that he was better than other people. So even though he was following orders, when he did try to help Rachel, but it would have been more clear that he was breaking the rules for selfish reasons, not because he had a conscience. Because like, I'm still kind of on the, is it for the fact that he was trying to get closer to Vienne that he did that? Or did he actually have a conscience and feel bad about what was happening to the Jewish people?
I think he felt a little bad because he actually knew the name of what it was. He was the one that said the final plan. And that wasn't really widespread known.
Right.
I've always felt like he's known more than he's letting on.
But I also feel like that's worse, that he knew more than he was letting on, because then he's just complicit in it. Mm-hmm. He just let it happen.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel like that's worse of letting that happen just because he's like, that's the plan, I guess. Like, I don't know. I feel like it can be just as bad, if not worse, than being the person who's actively harming others.
Yeah. They showed him toiling with that fact a couple times.
Yeah.
But we weren't sure why he was toiling.
Right. And that's the thing. I think we're never going to fully know stuff, and we're never going to be able to determine everybody's motivations in the war, which is probably the point, because people are more complicated than the flat villains. Like, he could have just been awful this entire time and we would have hated him and whatever. But the reality of the situation was that, unfortunately, Nazis are people too. Like, they are very complicated, and it is hard for me sometimes to like reconcile that in my brain, that they are not just these like cartoonish villains that are just all evil all the time, that there is a mix of good and bad within everybody. And even within, Captain Beck, there were parts of him that were a decent man, that were a good person. But then he was also complicit, and he was also active in some of the stuff. Like, it's complicated, and that's just the reality of the situation, which is why this book has been so hard, is because it has felt so real. Here's my set of predictions that I had before I finished the book. I predicted that Isabel was not going to die in this scene, that she might be out of commission for a little while, but she'll die closer to the end of the book. And I think she's going to be, for whatever reason, Gaetan is going to be the reason that she dies.
Yeah, I can kind of see that, but I don't see why that would happen.
I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but other than I think I wanted that to be that connection for Vienne wanting to kill him. If he's the one that, if Vienne is the old woman and Gaetan is the man that she should have killed, then I think he would have to be responsible for Isabel's death, which is why I would assume Vienne would want to kill him. I also had this prediction that I don't think Antoine is going to die in the prisoner of war camp, but I think he might still die. I'm not really sure. Maybe because of Beck's death, and it'll come out eventually that Vienne was somehow involved with it, and then he's going to be punished for it. But basically, I was really not convinced that Antoine was going to come home. Or if he does, maybe he'll be such a changed man that Vienne will eventually separate from him and remarry an American. And the reason that I keep going to this remarrying an American is that the old woman is in America. And so there's the reason why we thought Perkins was so important was because he was from Oregon, and that's where the old woman ends up. So we always assumed that it was that she had to marry the American to then go to America. I suppose logically she could, whoever she is, whether she's Vienne or Isabel, she could just make the decision to move to America.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I'm like, what's the reason for going to America, but other than a husband? Or maybe if she takes over the Nightingale escape route, maybe she ends up leaving and starting a new life with one of the people she rescues. But where would that leave Ari and Sophie? So that's where I'm like, I don't know. To me, it's weird that the old woman doesn't mention any other children. She only mentions her son. So that's why I'm like, maybe it is Isabel.
Just feels like Isabel.
There's too many weird loose ends that it's hard to figure out who that old woman is. And if Vienne isn't the old woman, and if it is in fact Isabel, then I feel like Vienne has to die. I feel like one of the sisters has to die. I don't know why, but I've been convinced this whole book that one of them's going to die.
I felt that both of them were going to live.
I don't know. We've got a lot of stuff to go through. At this point in the book, this is about 200 pages from the end. So I guess we'll see where that leaves us. But at least the last few chapters that we've read and talked about on the pod, honestly, from just reading these chapters, it's left me feeling more leaning towards Vienne as the old woman, not Isabel.
Yeah, I can see why you'd lean that way.
I just really don't know how the pieces fit together. But, I mean, I do now because I actually have read the end of the book. But at this point, I didn't know how the pieces fit together. With that, did you learn anything today?
I learned that a sister's love is very powerful, willing to kill a man with a shovel.
Or a shotgun, because Isabel was also willing to shoot him.
And then the description of his scalp falling over his face. And I was like, ugh, she hit him really hard.
And she liked him. I learned that the word genre has many meanings within video game culture. Because it's not just about what category of plot it falls into, but it also falls into a mechanics type of genre. Where can people find us?
People can find us on Instagram.
At A Pot of Sass.
They can check out our Facebook.
At A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm.
They can send us an email.
At apotofsass@gmail.com.
And they can check out our Patreon.
Patreon.com/A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm.
Thank you guys for listening.
We hope you keep listening.
Later.
We hope you stay sassy as well.
I forgot it twice in a row. I hope you stay sassy.
Later.
Bye.